Hello, I'm Bob Bradley. This is THE 101, Introduction to Theater and Drama Arts. This is it. This is the final go-around. We've come to the end of the semester and to the final lecture for this television series. So today I'm going to do a kind of summing up. I'm going to talk about where we have been this semester, what I hope that some things that you might have learned, what I hope will be some things that maybe you will do in the future. We started the semester talking about what is art and what is the art of the drama and how the art of drama may indeed be received through television, through film, the movies, and also in the theater. We developed those three forms, and a great deal of time, much of what we have said this semester is applicable to all three forms. They all three in many ways operate the same, although also, of course, their technology differs one from the other, and the means by which we view them differs one from the other. But most of what we have said, one can find true then through any one of those three media forms. Two words have reoccurred throughout the semester from the first lecture on. Those are imagination and creativity. And it's somewhere in this particular semester, I hope that you stop to ask yourself, how am I imaginative? How am I creative? You know, it's unfortunate that many of us, at some point or the other, close off our imagination. We all have imagination as children, and we use our imagination there. But at some point along the way, through the education process or whatever it is, we begin to discover that no, perhaps we shouldn't have an active imagination. Maybe we shouldn't use it. But what I hope during this semester is that you've learned some ways in which maybe you can open that door again. In fact, one of the things that we have certainly stressed throughout this particular semester is that in order to be a part of the theater event, that you indeed have to enter actively into and use your imagination. That in fact the theater experience requires that you become an imaginative partner in creating that event. So to get the most from the theater, to get the most from the event, then you need to come, you need to open your imagination, you need to enter, and again the word that we've used so often is you enter that fictive world, that point wherein, that moment wherein the performer is creating for you, leading you on stage, bringing you into the fictive world, and you open yourself up to it, and then you come into it. This is very definitely a use of your imagination. You may not think of it that way, but that is indeed part of, and certainly a very valid use of your imagination. Many of the individuals that we interviewed during the semester spoke of getting in touch with their creativity, how they used their creativity, how their creativity then helped them as they sought their way into the art form, as they sought in some way or the other to find the particular way in which they could be an enhancement and a part of the totality of bringing that particular experience to you. We heard the actors talk about in their approach to roles, their use of their creativity in those approaches. We heard the directors talk about how in reading a script that they visualize the process, that the script becomes the basis then for which they open up their creativity, they use their imagination, they open up their creativity and they begin visualizing the script. They begin to see the script as indeed an outline of actions, but not only actions, but they begin to see the human beings who are involved in that action. Those human beings then begin to move in the mind of the director. They begin to take form in the mind of the director. And so then when the director comes to the casting, to the finding and selecting the cast members who are now going to play in this particular script, then at this point the director begins to imagine, the director begins to match those people who are available to him with what he or she has already previously worked on. And then at that point, in some way or the other, the director must begin to find some way and know that there are never going to be perfect matches, that there's never going to be the perfect person who is going to be exactly the way that the director may have imagined the character to be. And then once they go into the rehearsal process, then at that point the director and the actor must now begin to match their imaginations and use their creativity, each to find a way into the script, each to find a way then to begin to move that script from, and the stock phrase always is from page to stage, to find a way now of moving it in such a way of putting it on stage so that then when you come in as an audience member, bringing with you your imagination, then at this point what you are seeing and what you are viewing begins to fuse with you and the creation of the theater takes place. Howard Gardner, an educator and philosopher at Harvard University, has developed an interesting theory about how we as individuals are imaginative, how we are intelligent. And he says that we traditionally measure individuals by their intelligent quotient, their what we usually call the IQ. But what Gardner points out is that not all people are smart the same way. That instead of only measuring the intelligence of a particular individual, we need to find the individual's creativity quotient, the CQ. The basketball player has his or her own special set of smarts. The hours that that basketball player spends in practicing hones the talents that the individual has. The basketball player begins to use those talents of body control, of instantaneous muscular reaction, of thinking on the feet. And these then become skills which are ingrained into that particular player. This particular training then enhances the special intelligences of that particular player. And yes, that player is being creative, instantaneously creative as he or she moves up and down the floor, as he and she instantly makes decisions about what to do, how to do it, how to react, what action to take, what move to take, what to do. That is imagination, that is creativity. We each have different ways in which we find our way into our imagination and into our creativity. Gardner, through the years, has compiled a list of what he has called then the creativity quotient. In other words, how can we measure, or by what means should we measure people's smarts? How should we look at them? At the present time, the list has 8 ways of doing this. The first one is called linguistics, word smart. And what we may think of here is that indeed one who uses words adeptly, who thinks in terms of words, and certainly then we can begin to think here in terms of writers, in terms of people who use words, people who use words then as the means by which they express their creativity in some way or the other. Certainly, we can see in this category that we're going to have the novelist, the writer of any kind, the dramatist, the comic strip writer. And that's a very interesting one because that person is probably in some way or the other going to end up using 2 of these particular intelligences. And that is, the person has got to be smart with words, but also has to have a visual sense here in some way or the other. 2, and that is visual spatial. That is the ability to think in terms, to think visually, to see things visually, and to create things visually. But also at the same time to think of this in terms of its spatial relationships. What we begin to find here unquestionably is certainly the visual artist who sees the world in those terms and then creates some visual art form. We also begin to certainly find the dancer who then sees the world in terms of the moves that are made and who then expresses those moves through his or her body in a performance space. So we begin to see in the second, visual spatial. Number 3, musical. This one seems fairly self-apparent, but what we need to also think of is that in addition to, or certainly inclusive and as a part of musical, we need to think of the person who hears the world, hears the world in sounds. Now, yes, though we think of those terms, sounds, frequently as being musical, but not necessarily are they always an outcoming or the outproduct or the product of these is going to be in musical terms. But the person who thinks of the world in terms of sound, intelligence 3. Intelligence 4, the person who reacts and thinks in terms of body, kinesthetic, high energy. So, thus we begin to find here that we indeed are going to have the actor who thinks in terms of moving, of creating a character that moves in space, who uses his or her body then in such a way as to do this. Number 5, math, and logic problem solving. And that is someone whose intelligence lies in the ability to see the world in logical terms, to see it in mathematical terms, to see it in such a way that they understand the world in a very organized and highly organized sort of way. The 6th intelligence interpersonal skills, people smart. What we find here, obviously, is people who enjoy working with other people, people who are sensitive to the feelings of other individuals, people who somehow who wish to be caregivers, who wish to reach out to other people. The seventh one is intra, I-N-T-R-A, intrapersonal, self-smart. This is a person who is much more inwardly intuitive, the person who finds the world much more centered in him or herself, who is perhaps frequently drawn inward, and who frequently then is a person who does not reach easily out to other people. And the eighth one is naturalistic. And that is, this is a person who finds him or herself most at ease with nature, who finds him or herself most at ease with the natural world, who reaches out and works best then in the natural world, who reaches out and whose endeavors are combined with, we might well say, with Mother Nature. Now, go back and think about these 8 categories. Think about yourself. Think about, do you belong to any of them? Do you see yourself fitting in one of those categories? Maybe at this point you really don't know. Maybe you really haven't focused yourself yet. Or maybe you haven't really decided what is most important in your life. But you do need to find some way of how do you get in touch with your creativity? How can you focus your talents in some way or the other? How can you take your talents now? How can you take your creativity and work with it so as to create the best conditions for you, find the best position available for you that will allow you to use your special creativity, your special talents, your special abilities. And this certainly is going to be true regardless of where one may be. Whatever the particular position may be, it may be used openly and creatively. Did you ever stop to think if you are in a restaurant, and the waiter seems to be giving you particularly good service, and then you may be in another restaurant or even the same restaurant, but another waiter doesn't give you maybe the same kind of service that you received from the other one. Why, in this particular case, why is one waiter better than the other? Well, maybe one's simply trying harder. That's certainly one way of looking at it. But why is it that one waiter is trying harder than the other waiter? Or maybe in some way or the other, the waiter is finding that what is happening here in the restaurant, that the enjoyment comes in serving the individual, in meeting people, in bringing them that which you are going to enjoy, and that is the food of the particular restaurant. So that in one way or the other, then, perhaps this particular waiter is channeling his interpersonal, his personal skills into that job of making a good job of waiting on you and letting you have greater enjoyment while you are in the particular restaurant. Certainly, and it's often joked about, but where would the restaurants in New York City be if those thousands of actors who are looking for jobs weren't there working in the restaurant? And yes, as an actor, The actor is certainly going to be highly aware of the body and the kinesthetic response, but now in this case, the actor needs to rechannel that thinking, to rechannel the creativity into then the interpersonal skills it takes to be a waiter. And that indeed at least can be one way of keeping in touch with the creativity. May not be the one that the individual has the greatest desire to be, and that is the actor, be on stage acting, but at least the actor is trying to find some way of being creative, of being in touch with him or herself. We've talked about the actors then throughout this semester. We have talked about many different people who are involved in the creation of theater. Actors are in fact only one part of that creation. I hope you have become aware during this semester that the theater production is a result of a collaboration. In fact, it may indeed be one of the most complex artistic collaborations there is. A symphony orchestra may be made up of 60 musicians or more, and they have a conductor who conducts them, and they have their rehearsals, and they then, when we come to this concert as an audience member, they then deliver to us that musical composition from an individual composer. But those individuals, that is, those musicians and that conductor, all come probably and usually from a like mind, from a similar background. They have all been trained, they all have skills, they all have musical skills, they have musical talents, and they come together and they are going to work on this, and they work together and bring us the composition. The theater, however, is quite different. It is made up of disparate individuals, individuals who do not come always from similar backgrounds, and individuals who bring together here many different kinds of talent. And they must bring these talents together to work on the creation of the production. So therefore, what we will find then in the theater is that we bring together the actors who are body, kinesthetic, mind, the director who is visual and spatial, and especially for the director, spatially inclined, spatially smart. We have the designers who are visual, spatial, and especially visually smart, who think in terms of visual outcomes, who create then in terms of the visual elements that you see on the stage. One designer that we have not mentioned during the semester, and it is one who has become much more important in the theater in the last 30 years, maybe 40 years or so, and this is the person we call the sound designer. And obviously in this case, it is the person who thinks in musical terms, but specifically here in not only in terms of music, but in terms of the sound of the production. And that's going to come up in several ways, and that is there may be sound effects, various kinds of noises, one might say, that we need to hear in the production. If a car drives up and a door slams, then somewhere or the other a sound designer needs to create, we need to hear that car arriving, we need to hear the person opening the door, we need to hear the car slam. All of that is an enhancement of the production of the performance that we are there as an audience member receiving. So it takes a sound designer to think in terms of, what is this sound? How do I find this sound? How do I create this sound in some way or the other? And yes, the sound designer is also frequently thinks in terms of music, and that is, and of course, especially in films and in television, we have people who write scores for films and for television. These people are then thinking in terms of the sound enhancements that are going to happen here in the particular film or television as we are watching it. They're going to create musical sounds that are going to enhance the emotional, the heightened moment here. They're going to give us, who are in the audience, they're going to give us some insight. They're going to be a guide to us. We're not always going to be overtly aware of this. In fact, probably in many cases, the best music for film and television is going to be that which we barely notice, that which we barely hear, but without our even consciously realizing it, the composer who has created those sounds, who has created that music, is now guiding us into the moment, is helping us understand the moment better, is enhancing that moment in some way or the other. So therefore, this is a particular individual that we have not discussed, but we should not overlook. And I certainly did not want us to forget the individual who is the sound designer, the musical designer, who may be working in the theater, who may be working in film, who may be working in television. So we have brought together then, we have the actors, body kinesthetic, director, spatial, the designers, visual, the sound designer, musical, and we bring in the person, and we get all of these people who have taken their original impulse from the playwright. The playwright who is, probably unquestionably, whose talent lies in linguistics, who is word smart. The playwright who created that original written words that go down on the page. The playwright who now, in his or her own mind, hears the characters talking. We heard about this when we talked to several playwrights, and they talked about how that without their even always understanding from where it came or even why, they begin to hear characters speaking to each other. They begin seeing the characters have an action of some kind or the other. And out of this comes then the words that they put down on the page. So therefore, the playwright now gives us this beginning, creates the story, using the words which then become the guide for actor, director, and the designers. Now, all of this has got to be held together in some way or the other. That is, all of these disparate people with these different kinds of talents, with these different kinds of impulses, all of these people have to be brought together. And the person who brings them together, the person who is the catalyst for all of this, is the producer. The producer then has got to be unquestionably interpersonal, has got to be people smart. This producer has got to be very sensitive to all of these individuals and to realize that these individuals are artists. And yes, artists have temperaments. And yes, Artists have special temperaments, especially where their creativity and their talents are at work. And so the producer must constantly be aware of this. The producer must move back and forth among these various individuals. Be sure they are communicating with each other. Be sure they are all understanding each other, because it is the producer then who is going somehow or the other to help to see that this final product, which we in the audience are going to view, that this final product is all unified, that this is all a totality, and that all of these elements which each individual has created, that each of these elements comes and fits together in some way to give us that totality. And then, of course, you know, just to help make the headache even more, we can sometimes throw in, depending on the kind of production, but we may also throw in composers and musicians and dancers into this equation of people being creative, of people creating a production. And all of these diverse talents must come together. They must learn to work together. They must learn not just to work, but to create. And this is a highly volatile situation in which each of these individuals is using his or her creativity, his or her imagination to create the production which becomes the performance that we in the audience are going to see. Much of this semester we have talked about and we have spent on these various artists, how they create, what they contribute to their experience, what they bring to it. And we've heard a number of these artists. We've heard actors, we've heard directors, we've heard producers, we've heard designers talk about what they do. I hope that from this you have gained some idea of how each of these individuals works. Each one is going to work differently one from the other. Each of us has our own way of creating. Each of us has our own personal way into our imagination. But for the theater, and this is this complex situation that I talked about, that this complex situation brings all of these people together to work together, to collaborate. And this is something that must never be forgotten then as one watches as one experiences the theater or watches film or television, and that is, this is a collaboration. This is a collaboration of many different artists. We have also, and we certainly cannot forget, that we have covered theater, film, and television, and that all of these represent business. All of these are commerce. This cannot be left out. We must always remember that, yes, these artists have come together. Yes, they have worked together as artists. Yes, they have used their talents. But what are they doing? They are creating an artwork which is going to become a product, which is going to become something that can be sold, something that we, audience members, will be willing to pay money for, to put down money at the box office to buy a ticket, which we then will go in and take part in the experience. So one of the things that we've also looked at during the semester is who has the money, who controls the money. And we've talked about the producer as being that particular individual. But we also need to realize that there is a kind of, in each of these forms, there is a power structure. And it's a rather interesting kind of phenomenon here, and we've sort of hinted at it a little bit as we have gone through the various interviews. But the interesting phenomenon is how the power shifts and changes as we move from theater to film to television. Now, in the theater, the playwright and the script are held in reverence. Now, it doesn't mean that it can't be changed, and it doesn't mean that it frequently isn't, but that in the theater, the script is held as being the starting point, and that what we need is, insofar as possible, what information can we gain from the playwright as to what the playwright wanted with this particular script. And yes, director and actors may well make changes within the script, and sometimes there are cuts that are made. There are lots of kinds of things that may happen to the script, but they always do it with the idea that what is being retained here is a means of making clearer to the audience that which the playwright created at the beginning, that which was created, that which was found in the script. If one is working on a new script, and if the playwright is available, then yes, frequently then the playwright can in some way or the other give some indication of this. Although you heard in some of the playwrights that we had conversations with that they really preferred not to interfere with what was going on there, that they felt that it was that they would want to see what this particular set of artists would do with this particular script that this playwright had written. So the playwrights recognize that what they are creating, and that is what the playwright has written down here, the playwright has written down an unfinished artwork. Now, the difference lies here in that when one has a novel, then when the novelist finishes it, it goes directly to the reader. There's no intervening agent here. When an artist finishes the painting, it's hung on the wall, and at that point then the viewer comes and views it, and it's a direct experience. Painting, viewer. There's no intervening agent. In the theater, however, there is certainly the intervening agent. The agents of actors, directors, and all the other people that we have talked about here. But all of them in the theater work with revering the script and trying to get across to the audience what they found in the script that the playwright created. Now, this kind of reverence does not exist, especially in the Hollywood film or in film period, because what we find there is that, in fact, the script writer is called the script writer, and that is W-R-I-T-E-R. Now, I'm spelling that out because I want to indicate to you that in the theater, the person who writes the script is called the playwright. Now, one spells, and here comes a spelling lesson, playwright, P-L-A-Y-W-R-I-G-H-T. W-R-I-G-H-T, not W-R-I-T-E-R. Yes, they sound the same, they mean something quite different. Right comes from a word that we no longer use actively in our vocabulary. It is an obsolete word, but it means one or the act of creation. So write, the W-R-I-G-H-T, one who creates. So therefore, play, write. And if anything, that is an indication of where the playwright is in the power structure. that person is regarded as the one who created it. However, you get to film, and what is this person called? The person is a script writer, W-R-I-T-E-R. So therefore, the one who wrote it down. And in film, it's exactly that. And that is, it is the beginning point, but it is held in little reverence, or I should say in slight reverence in most cases. And so therefore, the director and the actors and almost anyone else who will be working on the film feel quite free to make changes in it, to adapt, to do whatever they want to this particular script. In fact, once the writer finishes it, in most film contracts, at that point, the writer is finished with it. The writer has no more control over what happens to it. So therefore, in the power structure in film, what we find then is the script writer is indeed low man on the totem pole. Now, what is rather interesting here is an occurrence that has begun to happen in television. And that is that there is a change of status here for the writer that has occurred in television, especially in the last, maybe, well, let's say toward the end of the 20th century and on into the 21st century. And that is that the writer here in television is frequently also the creator. Or maybe I should turn that around and say the person who gets the idea for a commercial television script, which may eventually become some kind of a series, that this creator also is usually and frequently the chief writer. And so that the person creates, the person gets the idea, the person creates, takes that idea, the person develops it, writes it down, turns it into a television script. So we now have this person who is the creator, who becomes the writer. Now, what frequently happens in present-day television, which is very interesting, is that that creator/writer moves into another status, and that is that person also becomes the executive producer. Now, we're using this word producer again, meaning the person who, among other things, usually controls the purse strings, who usually is responsible for the budget. So that what we find then is that this one individual, yes, is wearing three hats: the original creator who pitched the idea, the writer who wrote the script down, and now the executive producer. As executive producer, obviously, then the individual now can protect what it is that he or she wrote. So there is this whole change in television, in the power structure, which is a very interesting kind of shift. And what also happens here, it's one of the reasons why probably the writing level of television has risen considerably in the last few years. And that is, there are some excellent writers writing for present-day television. One can certainly begin to think in terms of David E. Kelley and Stephen Bochco and Dick Wolf, among others. But there are many others. And because these writers are also producers, they in turn have reverence for, or at least certainly have respect, that's a better word. They certainly have respect for other writers. And so they therefore go out, and if they themselves are not going to be the writer of a particular script, they still are going to try to find the best writer possible to write a television script. And so therefore, yes, they may be the creator, and yes, they may be the executive producer. Somebody else may be writing the script, but they still have a very direct interest in what that person is writing, and that is as the person who originally came up with it and the person who is now overseeing the production of it. So therefore, the respect for the writer and what the writer can do. It has indeed led in recent years to some highly literate scripts. Some of the early scripts, for example, that David E. Kelly wrote for the practice, and when Jack Lawfer, when we did the interview conversation with Jack Lawfer, he specifically referred to those early episodes of the practice. In fact, Jack appeared as a guest actor on those first 5 episodes of the practice, all 5 of which David E. Kelly had created the series. David E. Kelly was the executive producer for the series, and David E. Kelly wrote all 5 of those first 5 scripts that set the tone for what the practice would be. I remember after I had seen those 5 episodes, I called Jack and I told him to be glad that he had appeared in those 5 episodes, that it would be seldom that he would ever get writing of that caliber, and to be exceedingly proud that he had been a part of the creative team who had produced those 5 scripts of the practice. We also spent some time during this semester talking about musical theater, not only because, as I pointed out, it is the most popular choice for theater attendance today, but also because it was originally an American form of theater that we developed. It is our contribution to the world of theater. And American musicals today are produced all over the world. One can find them produced not only in Europe, but also in Asia and also in Africa. They are widely known. They are enjoyed by all peoples. Also, in this and in this viewing and reception around the world, it means that there are many nationalities, many creators from many different nations who today are also creating their own form of the musical. And so, therefore, that the musical is no longer an American one, it is indeed now a worldwide form that is enjoyed greatly. But it is the form that we created. It is, we were the original ones of creating the musical, and we are now inspiring many creators around the world to do the same. We also looked at during this semester that theater can be a public affair. It can be a catalyst for discussion and debate. It can indeed be a source for controversy. But it can also be, as we pointed out, a source for diversity, for exposing us to cultures that we might never know otherwise. It is perhaps somewhat unfortunate that in this country that we have never learned, or that we don't hold the same value for the arts that many other industrial, affluent countries of the world do. Our government supports arts less than any other government of an industrialized, affluent country. From a study at the end of the 20th century, here is a comparison of just a few countries, but showing you what the governments in that particular country spent per person per year. So this is an indication of the government support for the arts per person per year in this particular country. One of the highest in the world is the very small Scandinavian country of Finland. $91 per year is spent per person on support for the arts. In Germany, $85 per person per year on the arts. France, $57. Sweden, also $57. Netherlands, $46. Canada, our neighbor to the north, also $46. United Kingdom, $36. Australia, $25. Small country of Ireland, $9 per person per year of government support. United States, we don't even rate in the dollar category. United States, our support is 32 cents per person per year of government support for the arts. And there are certainly many people, many politicians who, if they had their way, they would cut that to zero. I can only hope that in this course I have in some way or the other exposed you to the value of the arts, that I have in some way or the other encouraged you to take part in all kinds of artistic experiences, not only to go to the theater, not only to see a play, but hey, how about visiting a museum or a gallery? You're aware that here in Springfield there is an activity that happens almost 12 months around the year, and on the first Friday of each month there is what is called the Gallery Walk. You can go to downtown Springfield and you can go to 4, 5, 6 different galleries on Friday evening. They're open and they're there and they're all within easy walking distance of each other, and you can see the particular show that is up for that particular month. You can walk around, you can look at, you can take part in and be a part of the crowd that is there in the gallery and listen to those people and their reactions. And you know what? You might even try taking one other step while you're at it, and that is find a work of art that you really like and see if you can buy it. See if you can't take it home and put it there in your own personal abode. Let it become a part of your environment. Let it be a part of your artistic experience. And yeah, there are many other ways in which you can have art. Go to a concert, any kind of a concert, and at that point become a member of a live audience. And of course, I always hope that you will find some way of going to the theater, of attending a performance. I want to come now to the last thing, and that is let's finish the semester with part of the writing of someone I referred to earlier, and a writer that I like very much, the philosopher Susan Langer. And let's sum up perhaps the semester this way. The criterion of good art is its power to command one's contemplation and reveal a feeling that one recognizes as real. All the forms of feeling are important, and the joyous pulse of life needs to be made apparent quite as much as the involved passions if we are to value it. Art is a public possession because the formulation of felt life is the heart of any culture and molds the objective world for the people. It is their school of feeling and their defense against outer and inner chaos. It is only when nature is organized in imagination along lines congruent with the forms of feeling that we can understand it. Then intellect and emotion are unopposed. Life is symbolized by its setting. The world seems important and beautiful and is intuitively grasped. I can only encourage you to go out, take part in art, make it a part of you, make it a part of your everyday life, and indeed find here that you are grasping at that which is part of our intuition, that which is our felt life.